Well, hello, class. Hey, hope your week is going well. I don't know if it's anything like mine, but it is packed, and I have just been one thing to the next. Hey, I was reading through some comments and questions, and one of your fellow learners asked a question about the LPC and school counseling and all sorts of kind of related questions. What can we do with this, and so forth. So, let me say a couple of things. First of all, um, LPCC is not my area of expertise. Okay. What I can tell you is that the curriculum that we have in our program here at APU, so the 66 required units, obviously meets the California state requirements for the LMA, hold on, LA licensed marriage LMFT, LMFT, right? With the addition of the 1 3-unit career development theories and techniques course, which you are currently enrolled in, obviously, you can also meet the requirements for the licensed professional clinical counselor certification. So you can potentially graduate with your MA in clinical psychology and go on to do work as a LMFT or an LPCC and or both, right? So, and as you probably know, and it was talked about probably from your program director, maybe even from the top at Vicki Ewing, our department chair, the reality is that even though California has the strictest standards for a licensed marriage and family therapist of any state in the 50 United States of America, it is going to be quite challenging and laborious. I don't know all the details, but it will be challenging to carry your license from California to any other state. Now, if you were to come from out of state into California, it would be even more challenging. I'll give you an example, and I may have mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. In case you missed it, I had some students that were looking at doing, the husband was looking to go to seminary, and the wife was a practicing therapist in the state of New York, had been for, I think she said 20 or 25 years. So they looked into the possibility of her coming and practicing with her license here in California. And even though New York, at least at the time, had the second highest requirements for licensure as a marriage and family therapist, it still would have required her so much extra work to get up to speed and up to, I guess, regulatory code to be in line with what California required. She said it just wasn't even worth it for her. So enter the LPCC, which has been more widely recognized and I think probably pursued in various states up until just recently when we did that for California. So I don't know how long it's been here as far as an active kind of viable option for individuals like yourself, but I know I've been teaching this class now for going on almost 7 years. So given that reality, it's been around for a while. The LPCC is much better across state boundaries, and it provides you opportunities to do your work. So let's say you left California and went to Colorado, much easier. And again, I don't know all the specifics. There would probably be some state law requirements you have to kind of get up to speed with, but from what I understand, it allows you to go across state boundaries much easier. Okay. I have another friend who, his wife is a LPC in the state of Colorado, and so she was saying that they had considered potentially moving to California for a job that he was looking at, and if they had done that, she would much easier or much more easily be able to carry her license as an LPCC from Colorado to California than she would if she was a licensed marriage and family therapist in Colorado to California. So those are some of the benefits. Some of the other benefits, obviously with an LMFT, you can't even do, with operating under your license, you can't do cross-state counseling. So, things like telecounseling or, all the different kind of things we've talked about in this course, you really couldn't do that with an LMFT. In LPCC, you may have more options with that. So if you were to be a career counselor, although I do have a designation as a certified master of career services, it's not a regulated license. It's a designation. It's a certification designation through the National Career Development Association. Very different than a state-bound license. So I can talk with anybody under my designation. In fact, my CMCS helps me to with potential clients if I were to work with folks that were outside the country, or the country, but especially the state of California. Now, when it comes to how can you use this in the school systems, That's an interesting dynamic. So you may know this, in fact, I'm sure that many of you do, but within the K through 12 credentialed public school system in California, we have what's called um, the, uh, the, the CCTC, the something credentialed, um, it's California Certified Teacher Credentialing, I think, CCTC. And they're the organization that grants these credentials. Okay, so if you think about it, um, the hierarchical breakdown would be the university grants a degree. Okay, the state grants the credentials. Okay, so if I'm getting a credential to be a teacher or a school psychologist or a school counselor, um, although I'm taking all my coursework through the university, the designation or the certification or the credentialing comes from the state, similar to you're completing all of the coursework to be an MFT at APU. However, it's the state that grants the actual license. My wife is a nurse. She did her undergraduate degree at Chico State. She has a BSN, so she's a registered nurse, but the BSN is what came from Chico. The RN is what comes from the state of California. Okay, so I think all that makes pretty straightforward sense. In the school systems, you again probably know this, there are school counselors and school psychologists. Excuse me. Those positions have what's called a PPS, a pupil personnel services credential. Okay, so that's the state sanctioned, state offered credential that comes from the state of California, which allows you to say that you are a credentialed school counselor or school psychologist. I do know of some individuals that are doing their internships or their traineeships, however kind of wording you use with that. They've done that within the school systems. Charter schools have some different requirements. Private schools obviously have some different requirements. Typically, if you're a school psychologist, you're going to be maybe not a specific school, but maybe a district psychologist, and you'll be at different schools throughout the week, doing your testing, interventions, and things of that nature. You may work in tandem with a BCBA, which is a board certified behavioral analyst, and you'll probably work with those that are, oftentimes going to be in the mild to moderate or moderate to severe special needs classrooms or different organizational structures. But of course, a school psychologist isn't dealing just with students that have special needs or any sort of a disability. There's lots of different reasons you would work with a school psychologist. A school counselor is similar. School psychology requires you to do, I think it's a 66-unit program with 1,200 hours in the school system to become fully licensed and certified through the credentialing system. School counseling requires 600, at least last time I checked. I haven't looked recently within the last little while, but that's what I'm pretty sure is still the case. So each of these different roles has different requirements, which leads to different certifications and designations. We here at APU, we have a degree that I think, again, maybe this is getting to more of the question. It's not a degree, but it's a 12-unit post-master's program that you can complete, which brings you basically up to speed. So if you have a school counseling or a school psychology credential and a master's degree, you can take these additional 12 units to then qualify. At least the coursework requirements can be done for the Lpcc. So it's not a remediation. It's actually an addition to, which brings you up to speed, and then you're actually completing the coursework to lead towards the ability to pursue licensure. But of course, that licensure requires that you do the hours. So then there's 3,000 hours on top of that. Maybe there's some discussion that some of your previous PPS hours would have counted towards Lpcc credentialing and certification, but I'm not sure. So as far as are you able to work in a school district with an Lpcc, that's an interesting question, and it's probably a question that's going to maybe have a little bit of variation when it comes to different districts. I don't know. I know that there's questions all the time. You can, there's postings all the time that have school psychology, school counselor, and looking at those, maybe those have a, PPS preferred or PPS required, and if it's preferred, maybe an Lpcc could count for that. I do think it really probably is more district oriented in asking those specific questions. So you may find that you're going to, in this Lpcc realm, be working, maybe if you're looking for a job that required an Lpcc, you may be working, or I guess this is a bad word, but competing against previous school counselors and school psychologists who also had this coursework, did the hours, and they've now pursued LPCC licensure. I would say, though, ask your program directors about specifics. This is just my thinking, my knowledge, my understanding of the field. I know it changes rapidly, and because I know my area of career counseling, career development, that's what I know best. So I may even be kind of speaking out of turn, but I think this kind of gives us some context for the differences. I know then you look at the whole of the realm of Master of Social Work, and so you have this MSW, and their licensure is a licensed clinical social worker. So now there's an LCSW, which I know does have some crossover and some similarity with the LMFT, and especially I would say the LPCC. So can you operate in the school system as a school counselor with that? I think in some areas the answer may be, well, it may be maybe yes. Could be no, but it might be maybe. I have some friends that actually, hey, they are licensed social workers, licensed clinical social workers with an MSW that are working in school systems, but I don't know if it's a traditional public, if it's a charter, which of course is still public, but the requirements for credentialing and licensure vary. So there are some potential options outside of just the traditional route that one might go in counseling. Private practice, a lot of times, even at the community colleges, they want individuals that have an MFT or an LPC to do counseling there. And so, you're working in a school system, which of course the community college system in California is a public school system. It just happens to be, post-secondary, so higher learning is the community college, the 2-year programs. And so there's some great options that come into play there. So with this course in career development, there are career coach or career counselors. And they want individuals that have a background like you, but now you can at least speak the language of career. You can make the connections between the MFT or the LPC and career development, career counseling, so there could be some cool connections as well there. So, I would say get online, start searching, talk to your program directors, ask questions, talk to school districts. I mean, typically I've found that school districts, I used to recruit for school psychologists, school counselors, for special education teachers, for single, multiple subject teachers, for administrators. Districts are pretty open and willing to talk to individuals. So if you're wondering, you have specific questions, there's never any harm in calling and asking. So you are going to be so equipped, I think, in the work that you could potentially do if you were to really kind of have 2 significant licenses under your belt. I would think that a lot of places would give you a serious look. And then if there's state regulations where their hands are tied, I think they'd be honest about that as well. So I hope that's helpful. That's some food for thought. Do some research. Talk to your program directors and talk to previous students and current employees at these districts working in these roles that you may be interested in, and see what information you can find from there. So I hope your week's going well. I'll continue to see you online. Thanks for your great contributions this week. Looking forward to all that you have to share about artifacts, and we will continue on into our next unit next week. But finish this one strong, and we'll see you online. Bye-bye.